Hey, gang, welcome back to another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Eggert. Our guest today is a social entrepreneur that uses his natural storytelling ability to inspire the communities he serves, along with building a business focused on enhancing and developing life skills. We're going to explore all that and more with my friend, Khalique Rogers. Khalique, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Hey there. Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, how you doing?
Oh, man, it's a beautiful, what is it, Wednesday? Can't complain. The snow just fell here in Minnesota, so it's like a bittersweet moment. You're like, all right, well, winter is here, but it's only the beginning. So
we were small talking before the show, we started taping here, and it's cold. Holy smokes! Where did this come from? And we both got slapped upside the head.
Literally. I'm in the house and I have a turtleneck on because I need
it. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited for you to share your story with our listeners. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I am referring to you correctly. Will you share your pronouns with myself and the listeners?
Absolutely. It's he, him, and his.
Fantastic.
My pronouns, yeah.
Awesome. Good. All right. Well, let's dig in, man. So you and I, we've gotten to know each other pretty good over the last 6 months, and we've been spending a lot of time. You're a facilitator with Coalition 9, and I'm really, like I said before, I'm really excited to have you on the show. So a big part of what I want to share is your journey, and you've had a really interesting journey, and you've done a lot of different things in your short life so far. So talk to me a little bit about your upbringing. You bounced around a little bit and between Chicago and here. Explain to me a little bit about that process and how that all went.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my family initially, we grew up south side of Chicago. So where my mom, my father are from is where they met, and all their family grew up at. And for us, we weren't rich at all. We had pretty meager resources. So my parents just wanted to be more preventive, especially growing up in the 90s in Chicago. For those who don't know, still has a lot of room to grow, but there was a lot of just with gang violence, poverty, and just a lot of marginalization within those communities. So the resources were very slim. And my parents knowing that, wanted to be preventive and wanted to see what they can do to kind of change the trajectory based off of our environment. So they just had the idea and knew that there were some people up here in Minnesota that said there was a couple opportunities for jobs and resources and things of that nature. So they took the leap of faith and moved up here. I had never heard of Minnesota. I didn't know about it. I didn't know it existed. But we moved up here to the land of 10,000 lakes.
Yeah. How old were you?
At that point, I was about 6 years old. So just turning 6, because we came here, I think it was around the summertime. So it wasn't there. Well, at that time, by the way, I have a big family. So there's 5 boys and 3 girls. And my older brother, Raji, he probably felt it the worst out of all of us based off him being 5 years older, moving up here. So we didn't really have much of a choice in the matter anyway, being kids.
Right. Yeah. But I've met Raji, and Raji's a good dude. And he did some work for us with one of our events that you were showcased in. And I mean, you guys obviously turned out great. What was the dynamic in the family then, as far as with all those kids? What was that like? I mean, that's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the Brady Bunch, I'll tell you that much. Because we were pretty poor at the end of the day. So with that causes stress and other things as well for both of my parents. At one point in time, they were married, but it just caused them to split. So for us, I spent my early childhood with my both parents in the house, and then it was just my mom and the rest of the kids. The 6 of us. And for me, I would say it was fun at times. Our parents, my mom tried her best to make sure it just felt like a normal household, but I could always tell there was a need, of course, for a father figure, some type of mentor, somebody of the opposite sex to teach me. Well, not opposite. That was a dad or a man or somebody to teach me
Right. A
something.
father figure.
A
Yeah.
father figure,
Yep.
because that
Yep.
was it was essential. And
Yeah.
from those moments of my pops when he wasn't around, it helped me. I always seeked that type of figure in my life. And yeah, that's what in a way got me to doing a lot of opportunities, because we'll talk more about that, but I would just meet amazing people, and then in the world I'm like, okay, he looks like he got something going right, so let me see what he's talking about.
Right. So you had a lot of different high school experiences. You did a lot of different things. Let's dig into some of those. So between going to in-person school and then homeschool and back to in-person school, you bounced around quite a bit. So talk about that a little bit, about that experience that you had. Did you feel like you were isolated when you were in homeschool, or did you feel like you had some type of connection because of the large family, or how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was an interesting period in my life, because my mom originally, she was just seeing just the route that like a brother of mine was going. She was like, well, not just that, but she just didn't want me to be, and my little brothers and sisters to be influenced by what was going on in their neighborhood. So she was like, well, I have a good idea. We're gonna homeschool you guys. And I'm it's like the turntable switch. I'm what are you talking about, Mom? Because at that point I was 14, first quarter in high school. Finally finding myself, lost my little baby fat. So I, got some height on me finally. And it wasn't like when she said that, I'm like, that was not in my plans. What are you talking about? But I, once again, being a child, didn't have much leeway to sway what she was thinking in her decision. So we were at home. And for me, it was, at first I resented her and her choice to do that and to homeschool us, but it was, I would have to say, after about like a couple months, I figured out how to make it fun. And not just with my brothers, but we would, well, yeah, I guess it would be with my brothers, because some of us decided to, like, I really loved YouTube. YouTube was like, it wasn't new, but it was still like a becoming thing at the time. It's like, oh, okay, oh, you can post videos and you could be a personality on YouTube. I'm like, oh, I'll give it a try. I mean, I'm here, I'm at home, so I might as well. So there'd be like opportunities to, I used to watch and play video games all the time too. That was another pastime while I was at home. And basketball too, just the typical kid stuff. But there'd be challenges on YouTube that I could possibly win prizes. And that's when I realized that I probably wouldn't have did those things if I was at regular brick and mortar school, because I mean, I wasn't nerdy, but I was just kind of my own person at that time, because I didn't have as many peers to reflect on and look at and to see, okay, well, you're wearing this, I should be wearing these Jordans, or I should be wearing like all these fashion, things that were in and trending. I just kind of did what I wanted to do. So like some of those YouTube challenges made me put on like gear. Like I was dressed up as like a Assassin's Creed character. For those who don't know, you're basically wearing my costume was just a sheet from my bed. I put it over my head. And my mom she always collected random things from the thrift store. So if there were like some really cool like old style daggers and just random swords, just like all these random things. And so it was perfect for the challenge, because that character had a lot of swords. It was medieval time, like they didn't have guns yet. So those types of things. And then I ended up winning. And so when I won those challenges online, that just made me feel more empowered to just be who I am. I'm like, wow, this is working being like this. So why change it? And so once I got back to regular school, when brick and mortar school at Gordon Parks High School. That's where I noticed that the person who I was becoming was a lot different than the peers that I was around, um, because they had all the social pressures growing up, in that peak time of, that high school age, where I had the liberty just to figure out who I was for myself,
Yeah.
which everyone has that power to. They just may not, think of it or have that perspective.
Was it so when you went from virtual school back to then going to Gordon Parks? How was that integration process into that culture and that society within school? I mean, knowing you had friends and stuff, and you probably you're getting a taste of it, but
Yeah.
being immersed into it all day is such a different culture shock. Do you feel like that really drove you to be the person that you are now? Because you have really, at the end of the day, you have two paths, right? Like you can go the path of going with everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
just being a lemming, and or you can kind of do your own thing. And I feel like based on what we've talked about, you continue to do your own thing.
Yeah. I mean, after being so out of the loop and then going into it, it was like the Matrix, like I was Neo or something. I just started seeing the
Right.
zeros and ones all over the place. I'm like, this is what's going on here. And for me, a lot of what I was seeing, especially when it came to like the education factor of it, I was educating myself in my own ways, kind of when I was in like online school and like homeschool. That for me gave me a different kind of rigor than what I received going back into the brick and mortar school. Because although it wasn't their lesson plans I was learning, I was just learning more complex things, reading history, reading all these other books that interest me personally. Because there was more liberty when you're on online school to pick different subject matters. Um, so when I went back to the school, they're just handing us packets. I'm like, what is this?
Mm.
Like, oh yeah. And so I would finish the packet. I'm like, there's no way this is it. This is the thing. Like I'm thinking in my head, this can't be school. Like I'd rather be where I was at. Like there's cool being around people, but if this is what I'm learning, or is this the rigor of what I'm learning, I know this isn't going to prep me for the world or for the dreams that I had in my head of what I wanted to be. Um, so going like being more integrated into that new, system, for me, it was kind of daunting, and I realized that there were some things that I liked about it, but there was a lot of things that I needed to change or that I wanted to see how I could change it.
Yeah.
So even in at the same time with my peers, I was not odd, but I was just different. I didn't act like most of them. I even started a weird trend of just shaking people's hand like a regular businessman. So because I would be myself. I would just shake their hand,
Yeah.
and they'd look at me like, because they expect me to cuff it, and I'm like, no, I'm
Right.
just gonna do this for a while. And then it was like one of my buddies, Kevin, at the time, he was, I like that. I actually really like that. You're a businessman, ain't you? It just kind
Yeah,
of
I love it.
helped me set my own trend in leadership in a way, because even the peers of mine in school knew that I was more myself versus being like everyone else. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they kind of made me just a natural leader in the
Yeah.
space.
When did you start getting into doing some internships and stuff like that? Or what year in high school, and what were some of the things that you did?
Yeah, I had originally when I went to Gordon Parks High School, some of my credits didn't transfer from the virtual like homeschooling setting to the regular school. So then I was behind on credits. So when I got there, I was like, wow, I got some catching up to do. But I wasn't lazy, and the work was easy to me. So I'm like,
Hmm.
well, what can I do some more stuff? Like can
Yeah.
I just do more things? They're like, nah, I don't know if you'll be. I mean, you got a pretty heavy load, but that was heavy to them. Like for me, it was like I can do it. And
Yeah.
so I had asked the counselors, like, are there other opportunities? Is there anything else I can do to gain more credits? And then lo and behold, like he got both his hands behind his back and showed me only the core classes we had. He was like, well, there are these opportunities that you can try. Once again, the matrix, like the red or the blue pill.
Right.
And so from that perspective, me seeing that there were more opportunities, but they hadn't really been done at the school. They were just there. But, the school that I went to was more of a credit recovery school, alternative learning school. Like, so they had certain notes of photography and film and things of that nature, for the namesake of Gordon Parks, who originally if you're familiar, he created the Learning Tree, Shaft. He was a amazing photographer, even through the 60s and 70s when, in the civil rights era and things of that nature. So, and he's a Minnesota native. So he just had a school named after him. So with that, the school had that type of energy to it. So there were just more alternative learning opportunities at that school versus, say it was a regular public school, like Central High School or Johnson or Wayzata or whatever those schools are around the metro.
Right.
So from that, there was just more opportunities to do just random things. And so there was internship opportunities that would pop up. And I was like one of the, I would do internships, PSEO classes. And that was interesting too, starting college courses, because I took what they call an AccuPlacer at the time, which is something that tests you and tests your ability to if you could score high on these different subject matters, then you're more likely to be able to take college courses. So I scored pretty high on them. So I'm like, well, I'll take some college courses. And from that, I did actually really well, to the point I got interviewed after the semester was done. It was like, hey, you're like one of the first students at the school to do this, and you did really well. What was your experience? And I was just telling them, like this was something that I've always thought about doing, but it was more of a access to funds to be able to afford college. But I knew that would be a great pathway if I could find a way to finance it. And PSEO was a great opportunity, which is PSEO is post-secondary education. So it allows high school students to take college courses. And you can, in high school with an associate's degree, finish your first 2 years if you do it right. So from that experience, I had basically the guy who is now one of my mentors, Joe Nathan. He had originally interviewed me for that. He was like, hey, you're actually pretty good at this whole, public speaking thing. What do you think about doing a tour around the Twin Cities? And just telling in his words, youngsters like me, how, what of my experience and how they can access it, especially for BIPOC communities. And I was like, yeah, please get me out of the school. I'm trying to find some other stuff to do. So it was really awesome. And that opened my eyes to a whole new world, and not just within education, but just seeing, because what he was doing, like, it was a business as well. But like, wow, your business is like, going around changing policies and working in a community and doing all these, basically being a change maker for people and being an advocate and amplifying the voices of others. And at the time I couldn't articulate it like that because I was living in it. It was all new. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm at a Rotary Club speaking. Oh, well, now I'm at this student, I'm at the, what do they call it? State legislative, speaking on education. Oh, wow. And now, I'm just, every time I did something new, it would be a new space. And I didn't quite soak it in yet, but I was like, wow, all these opportunities are making me kind of have a different vision of possibilities for where my life can go. So yeah, it was an interesting high school experience because I didn't have one that most people experience. It was very untraditional.
Did Joe play a role as like a father figure for you then? You referred to him as a mentor, but did you maintain, I know you still have a relationship really good with him today. Do you feel that he filled a pocket of that for you?
Yeah, when it came to, because Joe isn't the type of guy that will tell you what to do. He'll just, once again, he'll give you the two pills, like, hey, you can try this, or you can do something you've never done before and see how far the rabbit hole goes. So I went to see how far the rabbit hole goes. Like I know where that road will lead me. That'll just lead me down the traditional route that everyone else is doing. But
Yeah.
you're doing things I've never seen. And he like empowered me in a lot of different ways to let me know that I had a gift that I didn't quite recognize yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was to move an audience. And it can be whether they were young or old, I was able to move them in a different way than I had recognized. And it originally started when it comes to public speaking. It was a spelling bee, not a spelling bee, it was a poem, poetry out loud. And I was reciting this poem called Invictus. And I didn't really care about that poem like that. It had some old language to it, but my the coach of the writing class was like, man, Khalique, if you could do this, I really think you can do this poem. It would be strong. And so I was practicing and practicing. Then the day came for the poetry slam. And I had seen everyone else go up there. I'm like, okay, it was cool. It was all right, but I think I can get this. And so I went up there and I got halfway through and I was going strong. And then there was a sentence that I just blanked on. And I was like, no. And I seen it and I was looking at my coach at the time. He was like, I could see he was like, okay, keep going. You're going to win. And then I just forgot. And then after I forgot, it was like a moment and I knew it was done. And then at that moment, the words came back. So I finished it. And I was like, dang, wow. Well, he was like, no, you was going to win. And I felt it in my spirit that I was going to win too. Cause I was very green at the time, but even then I just had a strong presence. And and I can see the people who are like, giving 10s or 9s, I could see them like, yep, okay. So that moment didn't deter me from public speaking. It actually made me want to keep trying new opportunities and to get better. And so when I met Joe, it was perfect because he gave me an opportunity to kind of expand on the skill set. That turned into so many different things.
Yeah. You and I have so much in common from the standpoint that we're both hands-on learners. We talked about that multiple times that, we don't do a very good job, reading a ton of books and then trying to turn that into practice. It's going to be those situations like that to where, success doesn't come from always winning, right? Success comes from tripping over your feet a little bit or forgetting a line here and there. And that's going to drive you to be better the next time. So after high school and you did some internships and you decided, so you had some college credits under your belt. What did you decide to do after high school?
Yeah. So after high school, I had the opportunity to either go to Concordia High School or St. Paul College. And I had been training with a track coach at the YWCA, which had an impact program. So while I was in high school, I just tried to fill my time with things that were productive. So I'd either have a job or I would be in a program that gave me different skill sets like business etiquette, job trainings, things of that nature. So from that opportunity, he basically advocated for me at the school. So and basically helped me influence me to say, hey, you could come here and join the track team because I've been training with you for 2 years. You can obviously do it. Because by that time, and no one can see it now, but I was actually a little chubby kid. It was funny. I had it was one of my childhood friends. It was a joke I'll never forget. I actually seen him a couple months back in Phoenix, Arizona, randomly when I went down there to visit another buddy. But it was me and my brother, and I was chubby at the time. So my brother was just a regular kid, but I was like the chubby. He's like, man, y'all look like the number 10. Because we were standing next to each other. I was like, from that moment, I'm like, no. I started doing push-ups every day.
No kidding.
And
that'll fuel you.
Oh man, it did. And so meeting Troy, the track coach, Troy Schoberg at Concordia, he told me, it was funny because he has this like charismatic way of doing things and saying things like, hey man, if you hit the dates, oh no, he said, wait, I got it mixed up. If you hit the weights, you get the dates. And at
That's
that time,
funny.
and it was funny because I didn't even care about like girls like that much at that time. But then like, as I got older, I was like, well, I see exactly what he means about this. And
Funny.
so, yeah, he definitely boosted my confidence for sure
Yeah.
in that period of time. But the reason I ended up going to St. Paul College because being low income and trying to have my mom co-sign a loan was like not going to happen. She's like, no. There's a
Yeah.
free option. Yeah, you're going to St. Paul College.
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me because it didn't get me immersed into the college, scene like it would be at a traditional 4-year university. Um, I was more of like I was working and going to school at the same time. So it was interesting because I would see some familiar faces from high school, and then it would just be I would be in a class with a range of students. So it'd be some of them be 18, 19, and you'll have some 50-year-olds in there. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just an interesting college experience starting off. But that led me at the same time, like during that same period, I had moved out of my mom's, and my brother, we were roommating, my older brother, Raji, once again. And he since he allowed me to stay with them, we ended up we were at this really fun. It was a night and day from where I was living at my mom, moving into this dope apartment,
Mm.
on West 7th. At the time, it was a Schmidt artist loft, so it was a
Cool.
huge, dope loft. And my brother knew one of the guys who was a property manager, so he got like the next best apartment complex in there. So it was really like 15-foot ceilings. I'm coming from just a small room to this like
Right.
nice dope apartment. So it gave me like this different energy. I almost felt grown. And I knew I wasn't, but,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, and so after a while doing my routine, going to college, doing my classes and working, um, one day randomly, my brother Raji stopped me and he was like, and I was went to go, I would go home. It's the same routine. I'd go home, flop on my bed, kick off my shoes, and probably just scroll on my cell phone for a while. And after looking at all the hot girls in there, something I was parched. I needed something to drink, so I went to the kitchen to get some water. And he was out there. He's like, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but you know, what do you feel like? What are you doing? Like, I know you're in school and you're doing all these other things, and you're like you're pretty solid, but you're going a pretty traditional route. Um, but have you realized or have you thought about what you wanted to do outside of just doing what's expected of you? And at first I was a little irritated, like, what do you mean? Like I work, I go to school, I go to the gym, I get my swole on. Like I don't this should be enough. He's like, well, it's an autopilot for you. Like you naturally do. I've been watching you. I see you
Mm-hmm.
every day, And and I was like, and I thought I had to stop for a second and think about what he's actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like, okay. I was like, oh, he gives a damn. He doesn't just want me to just do this mundane routine that will just lead me into a destiny that is prescribed or a destiny that's designed based off of a salary. He's just like, you can do whatever you want to do. And I want you to know that and believe that. And for me, I believed him because he did it. At
Yeah.
that time, he was a recording artist. He was on tour. He with like R&B singer. He was on Good Morning America, doing all this other dope stuff. And I'm like, yo, we came from the same household.
Yeah.
You're right. I can do whatever I feel like doing because who would have thought you'd be doing any of this stuff? But he was one of those kids or guys who would take a leap of faith. And I didn't quite know how to do that because I was taking positive risks, but not things that were really uh that would kind of change my trajectory or really go into something knowing that it was something I really wanted to do and that I was passionate about. And so after that conversation, it kind of transformed how I looked at opportunities to be much more intentional of the why behind it and to start
Mm-hmm.
finding purpose. behind the work I was doing. And that led me to really what started my company. Um, Actually, with Good Riddance was I had, and it was funny because I'm on the board, the President's Advisory Board now at St. Paul College. And they just wrote an article on the same story of me taking this composition 2 class with Professor Mr. Legs, and he has a twin, by the way. It's funny as hell. But so Mr. Legs had this it was composition 2 class, and for me, I was like, yeah, I want to use this paper that we're gonna write, but I want to use it for like more than just the assignment. What can I create? Since I'm going to be writing, I have to write it. So I'm like, I'm going to write a story or write an essay on education. Because at that time, I had seen like there was my friends that I was in high school. We started splitting and going 2 different ways, and I had noticed just like I had seen that happening even in high school based off of just the appeal to what we were learning, and I had enough awareness to know that even though this isn't the environment, or this isn't what the things that we're learning in this environment aren't necessarily, top tier, because if you seen what we were doing versus a school in a different area that had more funding, you'd be like, oh, well, there's some like differences here. And but I had seen some of my peers who I knew were smarter than me, that were whizzes at math, but we're in the hood. We're just in a poor area. So it was like, okay, well, there's more things going on outside of school that I need to give my attention to, which would happen to a lot of my peers. And I had seen that from that experience, and noticing that even going into college, I was like, well, there's something going on with the culture in school. And for me, that was something I wanted to explore. And I never like dived into, and there was like a couple teachers that allured to the idea that there needs to be a better education system, but they were in it. They were teachers. So it's like, oh, well, yeah, there's books you can read, but good luck changing it. But I was ambitious. Like I said, I had seen my brother be able to do whatever he wanted to do. And I met Joe, met all these other people who were doing what they want to do with their lives. I'm like, I'm going to do what I want. And I think I could change education. And very, very ambitious. So I ended up writing this essay, and I called it Good Riddance. And it was like, good riddance to the old Viking Stadium, and welcome the new one, and good riddance to blah, blah, blah. I was saying, but what about the education system? And I looked at it, I was like, this has not been innovated since the 1960s. And I went all into this thing that's going away, type it. And from that experience I had after I finished the paper, and I gave it to my professor, Mr. Legs, and he was like, this is actually really good. I was like, hey, I'm glad you think so, because I want to use this for something else. And he's like, what do you think? I was like, I want to use it for like an essay or a speech that I could do, and then go back to my old high school and tell these youth, and tell these people that I'm not even that far removed from. I was only gone for like a year and a half in college, but I just felt like I had something to tell them about what they can do, because I started getting that energy for myself that, I can be accountable for my success. And I wanted to show them that they can too, even if you have pressures and influences from that environment, or other people, and sometimes even staff, even your family, are putting fears on you that are theirs, but not yours. So it's like, and I would always think of that, like, those fears are yours, not mine. Like, I can do the things that I envision in my head. And so he was like, hey, man, I think you should give it a try. It's worth it. And at that time, like, I was real into Malcolm X and all, so I was real militant damn there. Like, I appealed to Martin Luther King, of course, but Malcolm X was more like, man, I wouldn't say manly, but he just had this energy to it that,
swagger. And
that fire to him. And it definitely showed when I went to my old high school, because my Paul Krieger, he's always been a big supporter of me. He's a coordinator at Gordon Parks High School, and he gave me the opportunity to pitch this lesson plan or this speech to the school. And it's like, yeah, I'll tell you, he took a look at it. It's like, yeah, you can do it. When you can go to like the three, what they call it, they had like certain tiers, not tiers, but it'd be the first class, first, second, third period. It's been a while since I've been in high school.
Yeah,
So it was a third period class. And he was like, yeah, go ahead and teach. You can deal with this class. You know what? I'll even pay you. I was like, oh, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we'll give you like a stipend of like $200 or something. And then that part for me flicked something on too. It's like flick the light switch. I was
switch
like,
flipped, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I did it, and it went well. And for the most part, it was a little too, I would say it was rough around the edges for sure.
Well, yeah, it was your first time doing it, right? Besides what you had written, right? So it was your first time in front of people actually giving this speech.
And from that, although it was rough, there were people, and I didn't get the response that I thought I'd get from certain staff. The students loved it. They're like, oh, this is dope. Thank you for coming back. And enlightening us on this subject of education, seeing how we can be a part of that change. But then I had certain staff that I thought were going to give a different reaction to it, but they were just kind of like,
right. You were rocking the apple cart a little bit there, right? Like you were right. Yeah.
I'm talking about their system.
And they're a part of the change that needs to happen, or they're a part of the problem.
Yeah. And when I was speaking on with the Good Riddance essay was that there needs to be self-reflection and accountability. And I noticed in schools, they would pacify or baby, people of color in these spaces. Like, oh, I know all this stuff's going on at home and all these things. You don't have to worry about homework, or you can get a pass on this. But that was detrimental to a lot of us, because the world wasn't going to do that for us when we got out of high school. That same teacher isn't going to come and take us to go get our first apartment or do any of those things. So there needs to be a certain level of accountability so we can grow up to be the strong people we need to be for the world we're going to face. And but there was like this victim mindset that got funding. So if you act as a victim or victimize, then there's a certain, that lane gets funding for certain things, and you get that perspective gets resources and things of that nature. But for me, it was a deficit mindset rather than an abundance mindset. And I don't know how I knew all these things as a kid. I was just reading. I would like, it'd be certain topics in books that made me more empowered, and the people I were meeting were all empowered, strong individuals. But then the temperament in school wasn't very empowering. It was kind of like, oh, this is what happened. And then February would come up, Black History Month, and like, oh, and this is what happened to people going, like, this is some sad stuff. And then, and then we get back, once February was up, all right, that moment's gone, and we're back to just learning about white culture and all the achievements. Like, all right, well, cool. I'm going to do something different. This ain't it. And so from that experience doing that first speech, one of the teachers that were in there, who was a professor, McAllister, he had reached out. I was like, hey, you know what? I see what you're trying to do here. I'll actually help you out a little bit. And so I talked to him a little bit. And there was a good friend of mine who was a teaching artist. His name's Mike Daz, or Mike Dazzle. He's a real cool guy. He's been all over the world now, but he was a teacher originally, but he's seen and noticed that the structure of which the education system was then and even now wasn't giving the solutions that those students needed. And so he felt pigeonholed in that system. He's like, this isn't working, but I can't do anything because I'm a teacher. I have to stay within the rubric or within their, their policies of how we should teach. So once I showed him my presentation, he's like, oh, okay, let's work on this. And so I would just work on it, and he would like kind of help me sculpt it and use different language. and make it more appealing to a broader audience. But
Mhm.
in the threading of it, you know, and the stitching, there was a lot of nuances that if you had the ears to hear and the eyes to see, you catch it, like some of
Yeah.
the real language
Yeah.
and things that were going on. And because I at first it was very blunt, and that's it. It was like, my dear brothers and sisters, you know, it was like that type of energy.
Right. Right.
And so I just had to make it a little bit more palatable to everyone that was in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So you took all of those experiences and that then fueled you to start Good Riddance, your business.
mhm.
So let's fast forward a little bit and go from that time where your switch flipped and you wanted to be more aligned with your purpose to where
Mhm.
you are today. And so I introduced you as being very focused on helping and enhancing life skills. I know
Yeah.
something that you're very passionate about is student-centered learning, which we have already talked about in some of the things that you did even as right out of high school. And then I
Uh-huh.
know that you are also very passionate about homelessness. So along with your passions, we even talked about this last week. You got to make some money, right? So you can't
Yeah.
be doing things completely altruistic. So talk about your business and the services that you provide, and how you continue to grow moving forward from that perspective.
So what Good Riddance is doing now, you know, it really is, we're really just expanding into just building a stronger revenue uh pathway, and just building just more connections with community and just getting bigger contracts. Because at the beginning of it, I was virtually just getting peanuts from people. You know, it was, you get a couple decent contracts every once in a while, or I'll do a gig or two, you know. And I didn't really have a mentor in a way, or someone that was doing what I was doing as a specialized skill set with speaking, that I could just ask, like, okay, what's the market rate? What am I getting for this? You know, am I actually getting the right value back as I'm giving so much value to these different spaces? Because a lot of companies were getting, you know, funding, and they would use my likeness and my face and just how I spoke, and to represent their company as like, hey, he was a part of what we're doing. And this is how future students or youth or young people can turn out if they go to our program. And look, I knew that wasn't the case. Like, I did a lot of work to get to get
Yeah,
to
yeah.
how I was and who I was. But for them, it was just great marketing. Um, and for me, I was like, well, how am I gonna like just build more revenue out of this? And I started making lesson plans that I started actually pushing within schools. And besides those lesson plans, more companies started asking me to host and to do to MC events. And I started facilitating and started doing workshops, and I started seeing that there was a whole nother lane of which I can go into more business sectors and use this skill set as well.
Mhm.
And then it also turned into me having more opportunities when it came to, like, I would do all these different initiatives around education and students, but I noticed that there was bigger systemic issues going on as well, um, when it came to like affordable housing. And I noticed there was a lot of youth that were homeless in the education system as well.
Mhm.
So that kind of turned me into, and believe it or not, like, I didn't think I'd get into policy in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't even that
Mhm.
guy. I looked like, that looks lame. That's just what it just did to me. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And because I'd seen and I've been in these rooms being with Joe Nathan, my mentor. I'm like, it was cool, it was a good time, but I didn't see anybody that looked like me there. I didn't see anything that
Right.
I could relate to. It was just a sea of white old men and women that talked about, you know, our experiences, especially because I would go into meetings that were speaking on like the experience and education for underserved communities like Black and brown folks, and I'd see them talk about our experiences, but mainly from just a observer's point of view, not lived experience.
Mhm.
So I'm like, that's not, and I'm thinking like, that's not the solution. Like, you guys are just thinking that you know what's going on, but you're just observing, and you're giving very stenciled solutions to problems that
Mm-hmm.
aren't addressing the main pain points. And that for some reason just stirred a fire in me to start really speaking up. Um, and then organizations really liked the impact I was having in those spaces. Cause I mean, although like I wasn't scared, and that was the thing. Like I spoke very boldly in front of these people, and it was like, who the hell is this young man?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so from that experience, other people started investing into what I was doing and giving me
Yeah.
more opportunities. And it turned into I was able to start doing research and work on initiatives that, really helped me find the purpose of Good Riddance, which is, it's when I think of it, it was more of a company that was system changing, and that could be a person, place, or thing.
Mm.
Like Good Riddance for me started off with myself being self accountable for my success, but it meant that I also had to examine what parts of me were holding me back and dragging me
Mm.
down, and how could I let go of those things to actually go into my destiny and be the version of me that I dreamed of being, like who I
Mm-hmm.
envisioned myself being. And I also thought about that with systems, and I thought about that with businesses, and I thought about that with policies. Like, how can we examine these things and have a more human-centered approach to how we're working on these different topics? And from switching that lens to that gave me a whole new perspective of how I did my work. It made it more impactful, more purposeful, and I found a lane, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
more of a niche. And those opportunities led me to work with a lot of different organizations that seen the work I was doing, and I got opportunities to do research and got funded with grants. Um, and then my name just started popping, because then all the
Mm-hmm.
things that I started doing that I was already done in like high school all the way up till now, and I'm 26. But that was a track record. That was 10 years of me doing all these
Mm-hmm.
different opportunities. And
Mm-hmm.
they were, like I said, I was with a mentor who was 40, 50 years in the game, who was very well known. And so it's like, oh, and then I'm meeting all these people, like, hey, this is Khalique. And I didn't know that he was just prepping me for the adult, from when I was an adult, that I can take that momentum and run with it.
Yeah.
He was virtually just passing the torch, and I didn't like process it.
Right.
And
Hmm.
and that's kind of where, and then once I realized that like the older I got and the more my career and this like opportunity started making sense, and I could start planning the successes now and like being very intentional on how I can, go about how I'm doing business. It just transformed my life and the opportunities that started coming to me.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm proud to have you as part of Coalition 9. You're an outstanding facilitator. You got that one thing that we always look for in our facilitators, which is insatiable curiosity, and
Mhm.
that's one thing you don't lack. And I think the future's bright. I'm going to make sure that we talk about where people can find you as we close out the podcast. But I want to make sure that we get to the 9 questions, because
Yeah.
I locked in some good ones for you. And then also, you've got your hands on a lot of different things. I know that you're very focused on speaking and storytelling. And what do you think is one other thing that if people are going to think of Khalique Rogers, uh, uh, you know, coaching on life skills is one thing. I think storytelling is another thing. What is the other thing that someone should think about what's synonymous with you, with what you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, I would say, and it's funny, I was just talking to a buddy of mine, buddy of ours, Gario, actually. We
Oh
were
yeah,
on the
good.
phone yesterday
Yeah,
for like an
sweet.
hour and a half. And we were just speaking on the fact that like what has been successful out of what I'm doing is the fact that I've been able to work with different businesses and companies and help them tell their story as well, and tell it their story in a way that helps bring more alignment to their company or to the organization, or even more alignment as a community of what their needs are and how to address them. And so when I say like that data driven, human centered perspective, that's what's been going on with the work I'm doing, especially even in the policy realm. Like we just got um, I did a lot of efforts with colleagues here in the Twin Cities on finding funds for permanent housing and affordable housing. But we had recently just got one a very big basically initiative when it comes to we affordable housing. $20 million for the next 5 years will be allocated to affordable housing initiatives throughout the state of Minnesota. And so from having like such a big win with that, just based off of the research, the work, the going out there and interviewing like homeless communities and homeless youth and doing all this small work started helping me see that the way I was going at it was a little different. And I was able to start telling stories based off of, the information I was getting in data and synthesizing it, but not minimizing, those communities' pain points or minimizing those business, pain points and with their employees and things of that nature. I started seeing that I became a pretty good advocate at amplifying the voices that can bring more alignment to those spaces. So that would be when I like put it all in one thing. That would be the answer to that.
All right, good. I wanted to make sure you were able to say that because you do a lot of different things, and you're a man of many talents. Yet, I'm a believer. You got to really hone in and focus on those things. So I wanted to make sure that you had that chance to say exactly how people should be thinking about you in the future. All right, we're going to hard transition here to 9 questions. Can you confirm to me that you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I have no clue. I'm actually a little bit, I ain't scared, but we're going to see what you're going to ask.
Good. I like it. You don't seem like a guy that gets nervous very often. And I like getting even a little bit, I like getting you a little uncomfortable. That's good. Mm-hmm. All right. Do me a favor. Close your eyes.
All
right. What's your favorite smell?
My mom's cooking.
Anything in particular?
She makes a mean, like, what is it? Navy beans and navy beans with the white rice, chicken and cornbread. So fine. Oh, can't forget the greens. Gotta have the greens.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. I love it. It's interesting how many people say something about food. All right, you can open your eyes. Okay. All right. Number 2, where do you come up with your best ideas?
I come up with them when I am at peace mentally, spiritually, and physically. So when I'm pretty much in balance, like, and it's something I have to intentionally do. What I normally, that comes from like journaling, having my morning routine when I like pray or meditate, and then I kind of just get my thoughts out. And when I do that, that's me filling my cup for the day before I go out into the world and help everybody else in the work that I'm doing. But those moments for me help me get out my ideas. And another one that's just hitting me now is when I'm on airplanes. Because you're kind of, because I'm like shut off from the world. And then my mind is just, I don't really care to watch a movie. I'm like, well, I just go into my mind and think about the thoughts that I didn't necessarily have time to focus on. So airplanes.
I love it. Flights. Good answer. Nice. All right. Who would play you in the summer blockbuster movie about your life?
Man, I ain't gonna lie. My favorite actor is Denzel, but he would only have to come in to the tail end of it when he's old. So who would play me?
They do.
Play me.
There we go. Why does that not surprise me that you would say that? I love that. And Denzel, if you did want Denzel to play you, they do, CGI does do some amazing things, but nobody wants to watch CGI for 2 hours. But that's a good answer, man. I think that's you playing you would be fantastic. It's the first time anybody's answered it that way. Very well done.
The only way I could think of it, man. Who's gonna play me better than me? I'm alive.
I love it. I love it. What is one quality in a person that impresses you?
I would say their integrity. That's something that for me was growing up. There was like just how I grew up and seeing people not keep their commitments, but when you meet people who really do what they say, it's just a whole different level of respect, and it made me want to be that type of person.
Yeah, good. Great. What is one guilty pleasure that you indulge in?
Oh man, I would say not really this. I eat sweets sometimes, but uh man, this is a great question. What do I indulge in that I feel guilty
And it,
about?
and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to be a food or anything like that. It could be you love watching The Real Housewives. Whatever. I could give two shits what you say it is. I just,
Yeah,
it can be
I would
anything that
say
you just probably wouldn't tell the world. Typically.
yeah. Well, people probably, yeah, they don't know is that like I was really into like anime and Dragon Ball Z as a kid,
Yeah.
where they were like literally shoot beams out of their hands. It was just really wild. But
Yeah.
like till this day, like if I have like some free time, like it'd be like every 2 weeks, I'll just sit and just watch like some old school like Dragon Ball Z or anime for like 2 hours and just
Sweet.
grab my popcorn or grab something and just go back to my old days.
All right, good. That's a great answer. Glad we dug into that. It took a little prying, but we figured it out. All right, what is your favorite piece of clothing?
Favorite piece of clothing? It would have to be the shoes, man. The shoes.
Yeah.
It's something
Any particular
about
pair?
shoes. No, not for real, because I don't have like an attachment to I have a like my style is it's a wide range. There's streetwear, there's casual, there's business, there's boots. I just feel like the shoes are for me are always a starting point to the outfit. So once I look at a pair of shoes that I want to wear, then I can figure out how the outfit's going to go from there.
Yeah. You and I are complete opposite. I have literally, I think I have some different shoes, but I just wear the same. I have like winter shoes and I have summer shoes, and that's it.
Save
all
money,
right.
trust me.
Actually, that's a great point. When I say the term leader, who do you immediately think of?
I would say first person that comes to mind. I mean, I'm looking at you right now, to be honest with you. For me, like leader for me are characteristics. And that was something for me that like I said, I needed more like, I wanted a father figure growing up. I wanted people that I could look up to. So I would, for some reason, people who had leadership qualities, because, like I used to read Malcolm X and all these other books about leaders, they would have certain characteristics that made them leaders and how they stood up for people or stood up for themselves, stood up for a community or a cause that was bigger than them. So when I meet people who have that quality, they can be men or women, they inspire me to do the same. So like even yourself, Aaron, like what you do with Coalition 9, your initiatives, and then just even when we were at the baseball game, me just hearing how you even started, your nonprofits and all these things early. Those types of things for me inspire me. And so I see you as a leader. So I look at more of a characteristic. And when I meet people that have those qualities, that just inspires me too. So not just one person, it's just people who match that same energy.
Series of qualities. Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, man. Yeah. All right. What is your, so you can associate this to any sport. It could be baseball, it could be basketball, it could be pro wrestling. What is your walk-in song?
Ooh, it's funny because I got a picture of Muhammad Ali up on my wall over there. And I've never thought of this. First thing that comes in my head would probably be like a DMX song, like X gonna give it to you, like something big, like
something
energy.
That hits hard.
Yeah, something that hits real hard. Or, what would it be? Oh, Ambitions as a Writer by Tupac. I think that's like one of the most. Yeah, listen to it. Maybe not around the kids, but it's one of those songs that like just makes you feel like powerful. Like, and if I'm gonna go do something where I need to use excessive force, then that would be a song that I would listen to like, because I used to watch like my mom used to watch like boxing and Mike Tyson fights and Lennox Lewis and all those guys. So their theme music as they were coming out was always
Yep.
something I used to love to see.
Yeah.
I think Mike Tyson had ambitions as a writer for one of them that always stuck to me. So
All
that's a
right.
great
Good.
question, man. I never thought
I
of
know.
that.
Well, maybe I'll even find it and we'll play a little bit. I think this podcast is classified as explicit because I say shit and sometimes drop an F-bomb every once in a while. But so maybe we'll play a little bit of some walk-off music at the end of the podcast if I can find it. TBD. You'll know when we drop this episode. All right. Final question. What is your go-to for inspiration? So something you listen to, a book, or something that really is like, that is something that you lean in on when you need to be inspired.
Yeah. Well, being a man of faith, I would have to say, like, I always read like the Bible or scriptures or something of that nature. And then, because those types of things, that was like my first father figure, believe it or not, was because when I didn't have my pops around, I would read some of the parables and Psalms and Proverbs to teach me wisdom. And those types of things are what really shifted my mind, even going in high school again, to maintain and be the person that I was, because I felt that I was making the right informed decisions because my values were in place. So I wasn't doing just anything that would just pop up in my head because I was like, oh, no, that thought somehow. Yeah, I would say that was something that has helped me become the person I am, for sure.
Great.
And it was off the hip, so that's true.
That's why we do it this way. I don't want you to have time to think about it. All right, you survived. Nice job.
Yes.
Well done. And you were snappy with those. So good job. I love it. All right, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that, listen, like first of all, we qualify for the longest podcast yet. And there's a reason for that, because that's a good thing, because this was a hard one for me to wrap into even close to an hour, because there's so much to learn from you. And every time I talk to you, I learn something new, including today. And we even did a prep call. So that's what I love about spending time with you. I want more people to be able to be exposed to you, and I want to amplify your voice of the great things that you're doing in our greater community. How can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Khalique Rogers, Instagram, Good Riddance, MPLS, and of course, Facebook. I'm more active on LinkedIn and Instagram, but Facebook is like the people I've had on there since 2008. When my mom said you can have a Facebook now. So that's just like a community of people that have actually seen me as a child grow into who I am now. So you can find me all of those, and I also have a home-based website, www.goodriddancellc.org.
I love it. So I'm going to make sure that those links are in the show notes. And so people can just click on those and it'll open up their browser on their phone. I am so honored to be friends with you, and super honored to have you as a facilitator in our community and just a member of our community. We got some really good things planned for next year in collaboration with each other. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Aaron. It's been an honor just to have a friendship and just be around your leadership, man. You got a lot of dope things going on. Someone needs to interview you on the other side of this, actually.
Well, maybe we'll figure that out someday. All
All
right.
right.
On behalf of Khalique Rogers, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time. Cheers.
All right.